Good morning. Welcome, everyone. I call to order the County of Placer Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday, June 13th, 2017 at 9:01 a.m. We will begin with the flag salute this morning, led by Supervisor Wygant. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We will now move to our consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda have been recommended for approval by the County Executive Department. All items will be approved on a single roll call vote, although anyone may ask to address consent items prior to the board taking action, and that item may be moved for discussion. One note is that we will be convening as the IHSS Public Authority for items 15A and 15B. That's a formality, but we do have to announce that. This is a roll call. Is there anyone who would like anything removed from the consent agenda? Anyone in the audience? Anyone in Tahoe? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the board? All right, roll call, please.
Holmes?
Yes.
Duran?
Yes.
Wygant?
Yes.
Euler? Montgomery?
Yes. Thank you very much. We're now going to move to public comment. This is the time that anyone may address the board on items not on today's agenda. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes per person, since the time allocated for public comment is 15 minutes. If all comments cannot be heard within the 15-minute time limit, public comment will be taken up again at the end of the regular session. Please also understand that the board is not permitted to take any action on items addressed under public comment. So if there is anyone who would like to make public comment, now is the opportunity to come forward, introduce yourself, and let us know what's on your mind. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Judy Cook, and I'm the president of the Applegate Friends of the Library, and this is more informational than anything else. I brought with me this morning a magic box, and in the magic box are petitions and postcards that the Friends of the Library groups have gathered, and so I have brought 1,624 of my friends with me this morning, 437 postcards, 1,210 people, and 415 from the petitions. And I just wanted to let you see that, because you've seen me often enough, that there are a lot of folks in the community that care about their libraries. That's it.
Thank you, Judy. We appreciate that. All right. Is there anyone else who would like to make public comment? Please come forward.
Good morning. David Henry with the Placer County Fair. And the fair starts next Thursday, June 22nd. You're all invited to the ribbon cutting at 3 o'clock at Seagate at the fairgrounds. I've brought some posters and some flyers for the fair. I'm working on getting you some parking passes for the fair. The big thing this year is we have free admission to the fair. It's going to be a great fair, whether cooperating. But we have some great events planned. We have some great kids already involved. I'm involved with the livestock auction. I know Kirk's involved with the pageant. We hope to see you out there, and it's the 80th anniversary. Come out to the fair. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Henry. Is there anyone else who would like to make public comment here in Auburn? Anyone in Tahoe would like to make public comment? Please come forward and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, good morning. I'm Catherine Hill, president of the Tahoe City Downtown Association. I just want to thank the Board of Supervisors for their continued support, and I also wanted to take this opportunity to introduce our new executive director who recently joined us, JT Chevalier, and I'll turn it over to him for a moment.
Good morning, Placer County Board of Supervisors. I just wanted to give a quick introduction. My name is JT Chevalier, and I'm the incoming Executive Director for the Tahoe City Downtown Association. I'm looking forward to working with all of you, and just in line with the Tahoe City Downtown Association, I'd like to also invite you all to a couple events that we have coming up. First one is this Saturday. It is our 12th annual Tahoe City Wine Walk. great opportunity to enjoy Eastern Placer County and the beautiful area of Lake Tahoe and sip some delicious wine. And then also our Concerts at Commons Beach summer-long music series starts on Sunday every evening from 3 to 7 p.m. and would love to invite you all and see you all up in Lake Tahoe. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, JT, and it's a pleasure to meet you. And thank you, Catherine, for introducing JT to us. Anyone else want to make public comment? All right, seeing none other here or in Tahoe, I will close public comment. Now is the time for board member and county executive reports. Any board member reports today? I see none. County executive? All right, well, moving right through this agenda then. Okay, we are just short of our first timed item, which will be at 9:10. So we are going to start with a department item today. This is a administrative services procurement agenda item. This is agenda item 6 on your agenda. Brett Wood will be presenting. You're not Brett Wood.
Sorry, you're stuck with me. Good morning,
Welcome.
Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is April Pay. I'm a senior buyer with your Procurement Services Division. I work with Brett Wood, which is why I'm here today. The item that I'm presenting for your consideration this morning is to approve the award of negotiated agreements to renew software support with 12 firms for 13 software systems that are in use throughout the county in the maximum aggregate amount of $1,948,743. And also to approve the option to renew those agreements on a year-to-year basis for 2 additional one-year terms, also in the amount of $1,948,743. These represent the most significant software systems that are currently in use throughout the county, and we've consolidated this request for you today into a single request to more efficiently and effectively secure your approval for those renewals. The business reason and the annual cost for each of those systems is in your staff report, so I'm not going to go into those great details, but I do want to point out a couple of small errors in the report. On page 3, the Safe Measures software, the last paragraph should indicate that we'd like to renew with NCCD, which is the software publisher. And on page 4, the section for K2 Black Pearl, the last paragraph should indicate that we'd like to renew with Source Code, that software publisher. Those were just simply clerical errors in the staff report. And I'm just going to keep that short and sweet. With that, I'd like to field any questions you might have about this.
All right, thank you, April. Any questions from any member of the board? Any questions from any member of the public? All right, Jack.
No, I just wanted to comment. I really appreciate the way that you've laid this out. The information is succinct and right to the point. Any of these firms from Placer County?
Unfortunately not.
Any of these firms from California?
Yes. Pardon me. Megabyte is from Rockland, and they have the support the software for our property management system. Nico Industries from Roseville, they provide the support for our on-base document management system.
Excellent.
And ServiceNow from Santa Clara provides the software and support for our help desk trouble ticket system.
Love to visit.
So
Don't want to live there. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you very much. And Jack, thank you for asking that question. Appreciate it. I see no other questions. What's the pleasure of the board? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, we're now going to move to our 9:10 timed item, it being 9:10. This is a Public Works and Facilities item. Easy there, Kirk. This is a County Service Area Assessment and Fee Annual Report for fiscal year 2017-18. This is a public hearing, so after the presentation, I will open the public hearing. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Montgomery and members of the board. I'm Gretchen Nedved, Fiscal Operations Manager with the Public Works and Facilities Department. The item before you occurs each year and is requesting a public hearing to consider the fiscal year 17-18 assessment and fee report for the cost of providing county services to special districts. The special districts include county service areas, permanent road divisions, and community facilities districts governed by your board. The services provided include street lighting, road rehabilitation, snow removal, fire protection, drainage, or parks and landscapes maintenance. Please note for the record a correction to the action being requested in the staff report, and that is this item does not include sewer districts. That is treated separately. The assessment and fee report is based on when the special district was formed, either before or after the passage of Prop 218 in 1996, which established an annual CPI adjustment to fund services. The CPI for this year is 3% where applicable. There are no county general fund costs with this action since the assessments are intended to fund the operations and maintenance costs for the year. And then after conducting the public hearing, staff requests a resolution be adopted to confirm the assessments for fiscal year 17-18 so they can be added to the county's tax roll. A budget summary accompanies the item, and a full list of parcel numbers is on file with the clerk of the board's office. Lastly, your board may be aware that the Greenbrae CSA annexation into the city of Rockland is currently under legal challenge. Given this status, the action today would include your board's authorization for the Director of Public Works and Facilities or designee to take actions that may be advisable as consistent with the final outcome of the challenge at County Council's concurrence. So with that, I'll turn the presentation over to your board with questions and action.
Thank you, Gretchen. Before I open the public hearing, are there any questions from any member of the board? Okay, I see none. I am officially opening the public hearing. Is there anyone in the public who would like to make comments on this item? I see no one here in Auburn or in Tahoe, so I am closing the public hearing. What's the pleasure of the board? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, we are going to move to agenda item number 7. This is a department item, Health and Human Services. We actually have a sequence of items here. This is 7A, B, and C. I think we will just take them all at once. Please come forward, and we'll start with 7A. Amy Ellis.
Hi, good morning, Madam Chairperson. I'm Amy Ellis, the Director of the Adult System of Care. This morning I'm bringing forward an agreement with Willow Glen Care Center. It's one of our residential treatment providers for mentally ill adults. This action is requested to approve the agreement for the period of July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2019 for a total not to exceed $1,200,000 and authorize the Director of Health and Human Services to execute the agreement with risk management and county council concurrence, and sign amendments not to exceed 10% of the total contract amount. Willow Glen is located in Yuba City and has served Placer County residents since 1999. The safe and supportive environment provides comprehensive services to individuals with severe and persistent mental illness who are too disabled to live independently. Their services are part of our continuum of options that prevent more expensive and restrictive hospitalizations. 8 Placer residents were served by this program in fiscal year 16-17, and 6 of the 8 of those individuals served were able to remain stable and prevent placement in higher levels of care. The fiscal year 17-19 agreement includes $600,000 per fiscal year, and 60% of that total annual amount, or $360,000, is paid for out of county general funds. The fiscal year 17-18 amounts is included in the requested budget, and the fiscal year 18-19 amounts will be included in the requested budget. I would be happy to answer any questions and recommend approval of the Willow Glen agreement.
Thank you, Amy. Supervisor Duran.
Yeah, I'm only going to ask this question once as opposed to 3 times, but I'm going to assume that all the contracts for these service providers have been run through county council. They've been approved.
Yes.
Okay. County council?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions from any member of the board? Any member of the public have any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the board? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
We are now going to move to item 7B, Child Abuse Prevention Services and Family Resource Center, Kids First Corporation of Auburn and Roseville, California. Twyla Abramson presenting.
Good morning, Chair Montgomery, board members, Mr. Bosch and Mr. Carden. Twyla Abrahamson, reporting for the Children's System of Care. I'm pleased to here today to present both of these items. So California counties are required to convene and support a local child abuse prevention council. For 30 years, Kids First has effectively delivered community-based outreach, education, and public service information to parents, caregivers, early childhood providers, and other professionals. They have provided direct counseling, family education, and assistance in accessing other services for caregivers, which fosters independence, and has provided assistance to families and parents to advocate effectively for their children in attaining health, education, medical, dental, mental health, and other services. Kids First has also operated family resource centers in Auburn and Roseville and has been responsible for data gathering, analysis, and reporting for the entire network of family resource centers, including the North Tahoe Family Resource Center. In the most recently completed fiscal year, the use of these dollars helped Kids First to serve over 3,000 families, parents, or caregivers, assisting them to maintain their valued independence and self-sufficiency. These services have further enabled parents and their caregivers to maintain their autonomy and prevent abuse and neglect, which also avoids the increased costs associated with further involvement with the child welfare or juvenile dependency systems. We're requesting that the board take the following action. Approve this grant agreement with Kids First to provide child abuse prevention services and operation of family resource centers from July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2018 for a total amount not to exceed $783,282, and authorize the Director of Health and Human Services to execute the agreement and to sign amendments not to exceed 10% of the total contract amount consistent with the subject matter and scope of work with risk management and county council concurrence. The full amount of this contract is funded with the Children's Trust Fund revenues, along with federal and state revenues. No county general funds are required, and they are included in the fiscal year 2017-18 requested budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions from any member of the board? I see none. Any questions from any member of the public? I see none. What's the pleasure of the board? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much. You are presenting 7C as well.
Yes.
Welcome.
For the record, Twyla Abrahamson again. With your board's support, the Placer County Children's Emergency Shelter closed on December 13th, 2016 to comply with California Department of Social Services Continuum of Care reform. Through a competitive process, Koinonia Foster Homes, Inc. received the award to develop a community-based shelter model providing emergency family homes for children when they're temporarily removed from their parents and or those with a variety of behavioral health needs while they are awaiting out-of-home placement. Koinonia successfully recruited a number of foster families, now called resource families, for the emergency shelter model. But through this developmental process, it was determined that there was not currently enough resource family homes willing to take youth with behavioral challenges. We returned to your board on July 12, 2016 to ask to amend this contract to enable Koinonia to create 6 dedicated emergency beds for those short-term situations in a family-like group home environment. This process has been working. As part of the new contract before your board today, Koinonia will complete all Department of Social Services and Department of Healthcare Services requirements to transition these 6-bed family-like group home to a short-term residential therapeutic program in compliance with Continuum of Care reform in order to effectively accept and provide services to those youth with challenging behavioral and mental health needs when they are not appropriate for community-based resource families. For those children and youth who are able to be placed directly into a resource family, Koinonia shall continue to recruit and maintain a network of emergency family homes for a community-based emergency shelter model. We are requesting that the board take the following action. Approve a contract with Koinonia Foster Homes for emergency and traditional foster care in the amount of $1,879,346 for the period of July 1, 2017 to June 30th, 2019, and that you authorize the Director of Health and Human Services to sign amendments not to exceed 10% of the total contract amount, consistent with the subject matter and scope of work with risk management and County Council concurrence. Contract expenditures of $536,533 are included in the department's fiscal year 2017-18 requested budget, and an additional $403,140 will be included as the fiscal year 17-18 final budget adjustment. As a result, the total budgeted amount of contract expenditures for fiscal year 2017-18 will equal $939,673. Additionally, the entire contract amount of fiscal year 18-19 expenditures, $939,673, will be included in the fiscal year 2018-19 requested budget. This contract is funded with 87% federal and state funds and 13% required county general fund match. So again, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and thank you for your consideration.
Supervisor Duran.
Yeah, I just want to rewind to the beginning and clarify that the county, none of us closed the shelter and threw a bunch of shelter kids out into the street.
Not at all.
That was all due to a state mandate of closing and a shifting of the way that the funding of this service was provided.
That is correct. Continuum of care reform, if you refer to it as AB 403, sponsored by Stone.
Thank you very much.
And also, I think to clarify on that point, nobody got thrown out in the street by the state or us. We do have adequate and appropriate places for all of the individuals who had previously been served and may continue to come into our system. Supervisor Holmes.
Oh, I just want to say I've been involved with Koinonia, and they do a tremendous job with our youth. They have homes throughout the area, and they've been very, very successful working with our youth. So I'd be pleased to support this item.
Supervisor Euler.
The distinction here that we're talking about for that, because to Jim's point, Koinonia provides a range of services to foster youth, but the distinction here is the youth with behavioral challenges. How is that distinction drawn? What is the process for identifying those kids that are put in this kind of a program as opposed to any other foster service that Koinonia provides?
Certainly. So we are responsible, obviously, whenever we do any sort of detentions for having some emergency shelter care. And some of the resource families have indicated that if there is a child or a sibling set or someone that just needs somewhere to be for a little bit of time, they're perfectly willing to handle that. However, some of our children come already with a mental health diagnosis. If they're older teens, they might have a drug and alcohol problem, and many of the resource families have indicated that they're not able to handle that level of behavioral challenge. So that's how the distinguishing is met.
So it is essentially a condition that's already known to us by virtue of previous behavior?
Most of the time, yeah. Well, I don't think there's been any indications or any times where we've placed someone into a resource family and then had to remove them again. But there are occasions that can happen. Sure. And that's, again, why Koinonia is actually quite well fixed in the community, because they do have a number of programs that they can move them between those programs as well. Right. It also doesn't mean that we don't use additional what are transitioning into the what I call the short-term therapeutic residential programs. Those are still programs that we will be utilizing as we need to when kids are a little bit too compromised or dangerous for the community.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And then last, it sounds like we're still looking for additional resource families to
I think we will be doing that for the rest of all of our natural lives.
I believe so too, thank you. But I just wanted to make the plug formally.
Yes, please do. Tell all your friends.
Anyone out there who's listening.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. I see no other questions from the board. Any member of the public have any questions or comments on this? Seeing none, it's the pleasure of the board. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move to our 9:20 timed item. This is a Public Works and Facilities item. This is an annexation to County Service Area 28, Zone 173, Dry Creek, the Egg Inc. property. Andy Darrow presenting. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair Montgomery, members of the board, Andy Darrow with Public Works and Facilities. I'm here to request that your board hold a public hearing to consider annexation of parcel number 023-250-030 into the boundaries of County Service Area 28, Zone 173, Dry Creek. The property is located on Rawhide Lane near Roseville. Ray Egg Inc. is requesting annexation of the 2.64 acre parcel in order to provide sewer service to the proposed minor land division in that area. If approved, the applicant will be required to pay the annexation fee in effect at the time they choose to make payment. The current annexation fee is $2,723 per unit, and this calculates to a total annexation fee of $5,446 for the 2 new dwelling units being created out there. Staff supports this request. In order to move forward, I request that your board hold a public hearing, and at the end of the hearing, adopt the resolution in the staff report to annex this parcel into the boundaries of County Service Area 28, Zone 173, Dry Creek. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Andy. Any questions from any member of the board? I see none. This is a public hearing. I'm opening the public hearing. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment on this item? Seeing none here or in Tahoe, I am going to close the public hearing. Bring this back to the board. What's the pleasure of the board? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Andy.
Thank you.
We're going to take about 2 minutes to just hang out because that is actually the last, I believe, of our department items. So, I'm sorry, we finished our department items, and our next timed item is not until 9:30, so everybody breathe for 2 minutes. Thank goodness. All right, it being 9:30, we are going to move to our 9:30 timed item. This is our annual presentation from the Placer County Visitors Bureau. Sherry Conway from our Economic Development Department is going to kick this off, and then we are going to hear from Maura Rowe.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Sherry Conway, Economic Development. The Placer County Visitors Bureau is a services organization that promotes tourism, visitation, and engenders a positive awareness of Placer County that strengthens the county's economy through increased lodging and business sales receipts. In this past year, 2016-2017, the Visitors Bureau successfully accomplished its scope of work with funding provided by the county's support in their contract. Here today is Maura Rowe, past executive director of the Visitors Bureau to provide your board with their annual report, along with a snapshot of some of the key accomplishments for this past year and a preview of the year to come. With that, Maura Rowe. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board.
Welcome, Maura, and congratulations on your new position with the City of Auburn.
Thank you very much. So I guess I'll go to slide 1 here. So this is just an overview of the first 3 years. The last slide you'll see this year that all the numbers aren't in yet. So you can see, so we're tasked with the Placer County Visitors Bureau, also beyond just the marketing scope, also has a California Welcome Center in downtown Auburn that we staff 7 days a week from 9:30 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. So this is kind of an overview of our work for the first 3 years. You can see that we grew with the amount of businesses and organizations, starting at about 67 in the first year, moving upward to 79 local businesses and organizations that we worked in partnership throughout the year. We slimmed down. The first year we got off to a fast start with events and festivals. We did slim that down just to be more effective and not just with the amount of staff, just slim it down to where we could be more effective and not burn ourselves out. You can see the measurement of TOT tax. We were able to increase TOT tax with nearly double digits every year. This is an overview of just our marketing and advertising highlights. I think some of the most successful, of course, have been some of the programs that we've been able to partner with other county organizations, the Farm to Fork, partnering with Placer Grown to really elevate the Placer County brand and our agricultural assets. And also some of the programs that we've been able to do with Visit California and our partners throughout the region. So in 2013, we moved from an events-based organization to an assets-based organization. Up until 2013, we really focused on varying events throughout the county, although very little to market our natural assets. So our agricultural assets, our natural assets, and then our local businesses. So in 2013, we really did a full assessment of what we had under different interest pillars. We worked with all of our local businesses, cities, towns, chambers, local DMOs, and then regional partners. And what we did was really try to look at what are all of our assets and what do we have to market all of those assets. And when we finished that asset inventory, we realized we didn't have a lot of updated, current, engaging, and inspiring photos, stories, anecdotes, or videos. So we looked for partners in which to get those created. Of course, our first and best partner was the county itself. We worked with the county PIO's office to develop and stage photographs and videos to best represent the county that we could then take those out and market to people outside the region. I think one thing, going back to that slide, a good example of having great images. Last year, we really were struggling to figure out how to market some of our museums. We hear often about from the historical committees that they would like more advertising and marketing of our historical assets. Although all of those images and stories were kind of old and dated, Eric Bergen from the county went out and did a photo shoot in partnership with us at the Bernhard Museum. The very next week, we were able to get a story in the San Francisco Chronicle because we had high-level images ready for print. So that one call just made it happen really quick. So the importance of having high quality, high resolution images. So back in 2014, we noticed our brewery industry was growing rapidly. Visit California had sent out some requests for who had great beer and craft beer assets. We didn't currently have anything to market them with, so the Placer County Visitors Bureau partnered with the Auburn Ale House and created the first Placer County Ale Trail map. Another one of our successes was the Visitor's Guide. although lots of things were done, a stronger editorial, better branding, I think one of the biggest accomplishments was if you look at communities like Forest Hill, you can see on the far left is the historic kind of common advertising page. A community that can't afford to develop top advertising, and so they go to their local community members to develop some advertising page to best represent Forest Hill. But what you see there are non-tourism asset businesses trying to contribute to draw business and tourism to their area pretty ineffectively, because their biggest assets are their natural resources. So we really worked with them and contributed a lot of money to go out and recreate their ads, and really tried to tell them that if the goal with advertising was to draw people to their area, then we needed to be consumer focused and not business focused. And so we shifted that advertising. We've been able to do that with many different communities, take that from kind of an ineffective advertising to something a little bit more inspiring to drive and inspire tourism. At the beginning of this fiscal year, we contracted with the Coraggio Group. It's a top chain strategy and organizational change consulting firm based in Portland, Oregon. We had gone this far and gotten this far, and we really felt like moving forward we needed to reassess how we were going to measure success moving forward. So we did a 2-day strategic planning in Roseville, and had a new strategic plan drafted to take us forward for the next 3 years. Also, I mean, for the amount of money that we have, part of the reason that we were able to accomplish what we have was our leveraging our partners. Visit California is one of those partnerships that we've been able to leverage. This is just really great because our focus to create a welcome center that's open 7 days a week. It says here, we basically, they sent in a ghostwriter at the beginning of the year. They came through and they basically said that we had the gold standard, that throughout all of California and all of the different cities, that the Placer County California Welcome Center in Auburn was the best by far. And so we've also been asked to take leadership roles in Visit California organization for helping other CWCs achieve success. Because of our commitment to communicate through powerful imagery and by showcasing our assets this way, our regional partners are also starting to take note. We've been asked to take over for Visit Sacramento. That happened in December, where their Instagram, they usually ask top influencers to take over. It was delightful that they had thought of us as a top influencer and asked us to take over their Instagram in December. Our communities are also taking note of the value of tourism to develop sustainable local economies throughout the county. We were able to do a lot of work in Forest Hill working with Brian Klausman. He initially contacted me through a friend from high school to go up and maybe pick some paint colors, but we were able to talk to him a little bit about utilizing his property in Forest Hill to expand the tourism market up in Forest Hill so that people could take advantage of those natural resources. Not only was his property, his Airbnb, very successful, he also developed a second property that has also been very successful of driving families to a community that really had no lodging. They had great assets, but no lodging. And then, of course, in Auburn, we've been able to work with young investors to also improve the product to attract tourism. And now we come to June, and we're about to launch our new website, taking all of what we've done to create top high-level, inspiring images, stories, and content. We wanted a better way for people to engage with that. So we know that we have some work to do, but this really allows people to look at what they're interested in and search and create itineraries And each one of our assets will have its own page with beautiful images. That's been a tricky part because a lot of our businesses, even some of the top ones, don't have effective marketing statements, nor do they have top images. So it's been a lot of work to go out and try to get all of those images with limited budget. Here we are at year 4. I think another thing that we haven't spoken about is really the board of directors. When we started, we were very Auburn-centric. We now have, although we maybe have a little bit of a disconnect with Tahoe, just with getting Tahoe people to participate and come down the hill, we've been able to expand into all of the different areas in the county, including a lot of South County. So that's been a huge success. A mission statement is stronger, more effective. I think instead of going out to speak directly to the consumer, we're looking more at how do we effectively communicate directly with influencers and top journalists so that we can utilize their audience that they currently have to promote Placer County. And that's it. Do you have any questions?
Fantastic. Any questions from any member of the board or any comments? Supervisor Holmes?
I don't have a question, just a comment. What you've done in the last 3-4 years has been phenomenal. You've really raised the bar, and people are now looking to the Placer County Visitors Bureau, as you said, for direction about how to improve their system. And I'm sure part of it has to do with my brother Mike Holmes being on the board.
Yes.
In my direction.
Or in spite of.
In spite of. Notwithstanding. Anyhow, I just want to thank you, and I know you'll do well with the city of Auburn, and it's really a great improvement in the last 4 years. And from
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm supposed to quickly introduce David Brenninger because he'd like to just make the closing statement.
We're not done asking you questions
Oh,
yet, so David,
okay.
wait just a moment.
Okay.
Supervisor Wygant.
I just want to thank you more for it's been great working with you the last few years. Done a great job. Obviously, from your PowerPoint presentation, that's self-evident. So good luck, but glad you're sticking local with us.
I'm going to be a lifetime partner for the county, so thank you.
Excellent. And I just wanted to comment that, while you may feel that you're not making those appropriate inroads into Tahoe, I can tell you that a lot of the feedback I get is people are going to your webpage to see, particularly winters like this last one where we were all a little overwhelmed with snow, coming down to the Auburn area and participating in the opportunities down here for recreation, tourism, dining, drinking. That's on everybody's radar in Tahoe. So you may not see it, but I see it and I hear it from people. So
Wonderful.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think now, Dave.
We feel your pain with Tahoe.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Well, I represent, of course, the board of directors. We have 5 of our 12 here, and I'll introduce them real quickly in a moment. But it's really gratifying to hear you and the comments you're making regarding Maura. She really has moved us to a much higher level. Just the presentation you received of the photographs, the way she moves quickly on advocating on the marketing of this beautiful county. And what we have is because of Maura. She's done a great job. She's got a real feel for Auburn, Placer County in general. You're a real leader, and we're going to miss you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
And she is now with the city of Auburn, and of course Sherry is new with her county position. So on behalf of somewhat the trustees of the nearly $250,000 that this board entrusts to the Placer County Visitors Bureau Board, we look forward to recruiting and having as equal, if not better, executive director for you to feel as excited about as we do. Let me just take a moment of our 5 members who are here. Of course, we have Karen right over here. Killebrew, representing arts and culture. Mike, who's already recognized. Mike Holmes, a brother of someone on the board from Auburn, and he's also our treasurer. Immediately behind him, we have Annie Bowler from the Loomis area. And also we have Lisa Joyner from Lincoln area. Other members of our board would be here, but they couldn't be here this morning. And we look forward to working through you with Sherry and with others to make this organization all the better. And we also would indicate, and I'm glad there's folks from Tahoe listening in, and I appreciate your comments, Jennifer. We're always looking for folks to help be on our board of directors. At the same time, we have an advisory committee. We'd like to expand that out even larger. So any of the 5 of you and the county executive have some names to suggest, we'd really like to hear them so we can help be a key partner in helping to market the vitality of our county. Thank you, Warren, thank you.
And Dave, actually, before you step away, what's the vision for your board in terms of timing and the process for hiring a new executive director?
We have a recruitment flyer out now. I might point out our current Vice President, Julie Hirota, who will probably assume the position of president, but a mutual friend of many of us, you may remember Nancy Nittler, past HR director, is a member of the Auburn Rotary Club, like several of us are. We asked Nancy, she was very gracious and said she would help us put together the flyer, walk us through the assessment of the applications, and tee things up for an initial interview panel and eventually with the board. We're hoping that we'll have everything in place by the end of August. We have the recruitment flyers out now, and we're looking to do those interviews going forward real soon. We'll be picking for the initial go-around some outside people to take a look at how to pare down the number, and then the board will determine how best, if not the full board, to do the finalization on that. We'd look forward to you or others who'd like to maybe be a participant or watch over our shoulder. We feel it's really critical. Again, coming back to Maura, she's raised the bar so high, it's going to be a challenge to see how others can even fit into that. And at the same time, she's worked really hard with her kids, and she's really a great mom, taking care of them while putting in countless hours, I can tell you, because I've seen it myself. Thank you very much for your attention for the Visitors Bureau.
Thank you, Dave. Any other questions or comments from the board? Any members of the public have any questions or comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, this was just a presentation. We do not have to take any action. Thank you very much, Maura. Thank you, Sherry. We're now going to move to our 9:45 timed item. This is also a county executive item, Gold Country Fair Heritage Foundation presentation. Again, Sherry Conway from Economic Development will be kicking this off, and then we'll be hearing from Mike Carson.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Members of the board, Sherry Conway, Economic Development. The Gold Country Fair Heritage Foundation is a charitable organization comprised of local community citizens, business owners, and business owners and citizens. The foundation's mission is to enhance the Gold Country Fair by providing financial support for educational projects that help our community develop an appreciation of agriculture and our natural resources. Here today, the Gold Country Fairgrounds, I've met Mike Carson, who is here to present your board with a new direction the fairgrounds is embarking upon, a new and exciting phase of growth and development. And so the following presentation by Mike will include an overview of some new and improvements over at the fairgrounds, as well as an update on their plan for the future. And with that, I'll introduce Mike Carson.
Thank you, Sherry.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Mike Carson. I'm here before you as a member of the board of the Gold Country Fair Heritage Foundation. I want to thank you for allowing us time to give this presentation today. The Gold Country Fair is owned and operated by the state of California. In 2010, funding was eliminated, and so there was an idea to pursue a nonprofit to enhance the fairgrounds to better serve the community. It was named the Gold Country Fair Heritage Foundation. In 2014, it was created and fully established in 2015 as a 501c3. There are currently 10 board members of an 11-member board. Our mission statement is enhance the fairgrounds to better serve the community. One key element of our vision is to develop partnerships with community service organizations and local agencies like Placer County.
Mike, can you go back one slide? There was just a lot of information on there, and I'm not sure everybody had the opportunity to see it all. Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Our fairgrounds is comprised of 38.6 acres, which is shown here. In just 3 short years, the foundation has experienced many successful accomplishments, one of which is our Ag Day and Ag Venture, which promotes ag within Placer County. Our passion, energy, and commitment to new and traditional events have contributed to our resources for funding. We started our first year in a deficit, and our year-to-date bank balance is over $150,000. Some of the enhancements we are targeting are the stage, for which we have a $10,000 grant. We've budgeted $70,000 to basically give it a facelift.
So part of that 153,000 will be, that 70,000 will be part of that?
Yes.
Okay.
We like to try to get volunteer help, and so our budgets are set based on what actual costs would be, but we do our best not to actually spend that full budget amount with volunteer and donations.
It's an admirable goal.
We've been successful so far. So we are, the foundation building is being upgraded, and that has recently been adopted by the Auburn Host Lions, and our budget for that is $50,000. A lot of the work has been completed in there already. The Placer building is the largest building on site. We're looking at doing a full commercial kitchen so that we can reach out to local schools for possible culinary programs and open up the ability to use that building for events and whatnot. Nearing completion is our barns and soon to be community garden. Much of this work is complete, and we were well within our budget. We had a lot of volunteer work and donations provided for that. The future could possibly be a canyon amphitheater, convention center, boutique hotel, or covered arena. The possibilities are unlimited. We would like Placer County to join us in a partnership for economic development and to enhance the fairgrounds to better serve the community. With that, that concludes our presentation today. I do have some of the board members here, Casey Conway, Elisa Noble, and the past board president and current CEO of the fairgrounds, Don Alis. So we're here to answer any questions that you might have.
Excellent. Supervisor Holmes.
Yes, thanks, Mike, for bringing this forward, and thanks, Don, for your leadership bringing the Gold Country Fair in Auburn up to par. The foundation building, I know some of those beautiful trees had to come down. Are you using any of that lumber? And
yes, some of the redwoods that were at the front entry came down because they were deemed to be hazardous, I believe, because of disease. And we're actually, Don has been very successful in working with a local person to come mill the lumber. And so they've milled that all into 1x6, I believe, and they're lining the whole inside of the foundation building with that, the lumber generated from that. Plus, I think he's using some of that lumber for other purposes on site as well.
The fair has been a long time gem for the city of Auburn and Placer County, but it really needs some polish, and I think that's what we're doing, polishing up that gem and working with Maura Rowe and Sherry Conway. I think we're going to see some great things from the Gold Country Fair in Auburn.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments from the board? I just want to thank you for coming and giving the presentation today. It's a little bit out of the norm to have a group that we don't partner with come and give these sorts of presentations, but I think it's important for us to understand the context of what is going on here in our county seat, and particularly as it relates to this state asset, which the state sort of threw its hands up on, honestly. So just really want to echo Supervisor Holmes' words and say, thank you for the work you're doing on this. I think there's some incredible opportunities between the city, the county, and the nonprofit, as well as other groups, like our agricultural community here, to really do some amazing things there, because it is a gem. Thank you
Absolutely.
so much.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from any member of the public on this? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much. Again, this was just a presentation. We do not have to take any action. We are 5 minutes from our 10 o'clock timed item. Jerry, did you want to go to closed session? Is that going to be reasonably quick? Okay, that's going to be quick. We are going to go to closed session, and then we will come back for our timed item at 10 o'clock, which is our budget.
The board will now adjourn to closed session for a conference with legal counsel to discuss one item of anticipated litigation.
All right, we are back from closed session. Jerry, would you give us a report out, please?
Yes, in closed session, the board heard a report from council on a matter of anticipated litigation and authorized the county counsel's office to initiate litigation to recover county funds against Star Company's mobile home communities. The vote was unanimous on that issue.
Thank you very much. We're now going to move to our 10 o'clock timed item. This is a county executive item. Kicking it off today will be David Bosch, and then we will be turning it over to various county staff.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. It's our pleasure this morning to present the proposed fiscal year 2017-18 budget for your consideration. In accordance with our county charter and consistent with board policies, I recommend today that you approve the fiscal 17-18 proposed budget and related actions. Let me say that the proposed budget really represents the county's authority to spend beginning the fiscal year start date of July 1st. This year, it really enables us to continue a seamless provision of county services to our community members. The budget before you today is really the product of a lot of hard work from many people across the organization. It began more than 6 months ago when we provided guidance to our departments, and culminated recently with the compilation of what is now the proposed budget for your consideration. I want to particularly note the extraordinary efforts of staff, both in our departments but also in the county executive office. This was a particularly challenging year due to staff turnover, but the team really stepped up and did a remarkable job. And so what you have before you is really the product of a lot of hard work and extra hours on many people's parts. I want to particularly recognize my deputies, Becky, Jennifer, Dave, and also Daniel, who's with us today, who really stepped up into a leadership role this year. All that said, let me now introduce you to our new Deputy CEO, Kate Sampson, who will present the budget to you this morning. Kate?
Welcome, Kate. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. This marks day 7, I believe, as a member of the Placer County team. So as David mentioned, this budget represents just a tremendous effort, and you have a wonderful staff that have risen to the occasion to complete it. It's my pleasure to swoop in at the last minute and take all the credit, so thank you.
Okay, so I just have to say, let me just, before we get going, echo David's words. I know that the 4 of you have worked incredibly long hours on this because I've received emails from all of you and phone calls at crazy times of the night and on weekends. So thank you in advance for all you've done around this budget. Sorry.
Thank you. Yes, I absolutely echo that. I'm aware of the just tremendous amount of work that goes into something like this. So it is my honor to present the fruits of their labor to you for consideration today. And with that, we will jump right in. Before you for consideration is a fiscal year 2017-18 proposed budget. It includes the interim spending plan for both the county and lighting districts, county service areas, and sewer maintenance districts. We'd like to introduce the 17-18 personnel allocation ordinance, approve purchase of equipment as reflected on the master fixed asset list, and designate unassigned carryover fund balance consistent with your financial policy. And that will be considered further with the final budget presentation in September. So just a look back at how we've arrived at today's hearing. In March of this year, you had a mid-year fiscal update to discuss the county's financial position and provide direction on the development of this proposed budget. We're here today to discuss, as David mentioned, the interim spending plan, and then we'll be back to discuss with you at the end of July countywide budget as well as some important capital priorities and how we might propose to fund those. And then in September, we'll have a final budget hearing for any adjustments, financial adjustments, and to consider some supplemental requests after the books have closed on fiscal year 16-17. Just a look at the economy and how it affects the county's financial position. We're continuing to see an upward growth in countywide assessed valuation. Property tax is the single largest revenue source of your general fund discretionary revenues. And we've currently budgeted about a 3% uptick in those revenues for next year. Pending the final tax rolls, we may be looking at closer to a 4% increase. So we'll have those final numbers for you in September. This is consistent with what we're seeing around the region. In fact, this county has now achieved pre-Great Recession levels in terms of assessed valuation, which I think is a good indicator of a healthy economy. But of course, everybody's wondering how long that will last. So we'll continue to monitor that for you. You also have modest growth in other discretionary revenues tied to the economy, like sales tax. We're projecting about a 5% increase. And your transient occupancy tax, or TOT, is up quite a bit over the prior year, thanks in part to such a successful winter and ski season up in Tahoe. We see declining unemployment over the prior year, also a good indicator of a healthy economy. But there are other factors that impact our spending specifically. So the state budget includes an elimination of the maintenance of effort for in-home support services, which again we are monitoring and determining how it will affect our service provision and the associated costs. We also see increasing costs for salaries and benefits, namely CalPERS and health care. So it is typical. I'm sure you're used to seeing retirement and healthcare costs climbing year over year. In addition, CalPERS recently adjusted their discount rate, which will begin increasing our costs for retirement in fiscal year 18-19. So it's something that we're monitoring for future. It's not included in this budget, but we are looking at how we can begin addressing those liabilities, get out in front of that. So that future budgets aren't severely impacted. Additionally, you have some labor units in negotiation, and any outcome of those negotiations are not included in this budget. So we would recommend to you an adjustment to the budget once those have concluded if required. There are a number of efforts that have been taken on by your board and the staff and continue to move forward. I'd like to just personally commend this board. Obviously, you're very dedicated to making sure the county is in a strong fiscal position, and I'm very pleased to be coming to join this team at a time when the county does have such a strong foundation. But there are many challenges moving forward, as you well know. So some of the efforts that we're looking at include multi-year model for budgeting moving forward. We have policies for funding reserves and contingencies that we have met with this proposed budget. We're continuing to focus on development, both in the Sunset Area Plan and the Placer County Government Center Master Plan. You've recently approved the Tahoe Area Plan, and there are just a tremendous amount of efforts involved in making Placer County a great place to live, work, and learn. We're continuing to implement the Criminal Justice Master Plan, including planning for a couple of adult facilities and an acute mental health annex. And we're exploring the possibility of adding a crime lab and coroner's facility update. Regarding housing and homelessness, we have efforts to develop workforce housing and create some solutions for the ongoing homelessness issues that we see in the county. We're also addressing environmental sustainability with the Placer County Conservation Plan. And we will have for your board a recommendation to consider funding open space acquisition with the final budget in September. We also have some unfunded actuarial accrued liabilities related to OPEB and CalPERS. And again, I'm very pleased that the county has taken such an aggressive approach in positioning itself to address those liabilities in the future. So we will have recommendations about how we can continue to get out in front of those costs with your final budget in September. We continue to transition to priority-based budgeting, which will include further aligning cost of service with its provision by adding performance measures so you can see how well your dollars are being put to work. And a continued commitment to transparency through our website and social media, as well as OpenGov. So there's a lot happening in addition to just our normal provision of services. Specifically, I'd like to point out a few changes in this year's budget or emerging issues that we will be dealing with in the coming months. First is the stabilization of library services. This proposed budget includes funding for some professional library staff in order to better address those operations. For fire services, we've received a request for an increased contribution to CAL FIRE, and we'll be evaluating that over the summer, in addition to taking this year to look at distressed fire districts and how we might improve their position or partner with them. In terms of capital facilities, there are a number of priority facilities that have been identified. And as I mentioned, we'll be coming to your board late in July to discuss how we might move forward with a plan to construct some of those facilities. And at that point, with the board's direction, we would make any adjustments for final budget that would accommodate your decisions. In addition, public safety continues to have increased costs related to many of the cost drivers I spoke about. Just in general, salaries and benefits climbing. You have Measure F affecting the cost of salaries for some of the individuals in the public protection sector, in addition to CalPERS increases and the others that we already mentioned. Currently, the budgeted contribution for public protection is about half of all general fund discretionary revenues. Touching again on CalPERS retirement costs and health care, this graph reflects the amount included in the proposed budget, but you can see when we project out into about 2024-25, the amount currently budgeted would need to double in order to keep up with those requirements. So we will certainly be looking at ways to pre-fund some of those liabilities. As you can imagine, even though discretionary revenues, assuming they continue to climb, we do have concerns about keeping pace with such a significant increase. Additionally, the County Executive Office received many supplemental requests from departments in regards to services that they would like to provide, services and facilities. Included with this budget are a few recommendations, including $1.25 million for the Placer County Conservation Plan to finalize that effort. We have some positions tied to economic development as a priority for this board that are already included in the recommended budget, although there are about $10.5 million in deferred requests that we'd like to consider with the final budget. Once we have a better idea how fiscal year 16-17 will close, then we will be able to recommend to you an amount that you may be able to address some of these supplemental requests. The recommended budget for 17-18 for all funds is just over $796 million. You can see in the general fund and public safety that represents about 1.6 and 1% increase respectively. In the infrastructure funds, you're seeing a decrease of about 15% in appropriations. That's related to the timing of capital project This graph is a representation not of all funds, but just operating funds in the proposed budget. And there's a lot going on in this chart, but I'd like to draw your attention to that dark green revenue bar on the far right-hand side, where it shows that operating expenditures are increasing from the current year in about $644 million to about $674 million. Again, just as a product of those, a lot of those cost drivers. And our revenues are also increasing, which is good news, but you see that kind of light green bar on top of the dark green bar says fund balance. And I think what may be a little different this year is we are anticipating a carryover fund balance, which basically means appropriations that aren't spent in the current year will be carried over and available to spend next year, which is typical for how this county operates, although when compared to the blue bar to its left, you'll see that we are anticipating needing the majority of that fund balance to meet our expected expenditure appropriations, meaning that we anticipate needing that carryover fund balance in order to continue operating at our current levels. So there's anticipated to be fewer carryover dollars available for supplemental requests in September. And again, just want to note that public safety portion continues to grow as costs grow. And I think this next graph illustrates how that's affected the county's provision of services. This graph represents per capita expenditures for about the last 40 years in a number of different service areas. You can see generally all functions have remained relatively flat since the late 70s, with the exception of public protection, which has climbed about 86% since the 70s. So there are a number of reasons for that, but clearly this will be an ongoing issue and something to monitor moving forward. The flip side of this graph is your per capita revenues, which again are relatively consistent over the last 40 years when adjusted for inflation. You'll see, of course, the purple line, which shows tax revenue has never really recovered from pre-Prop 13 levels. This chart shows just another look at your countywide budget. These are expenditures by function. About 64% of the budget goes towards public protection and health and human support. Shown through a different lens. Again, this is your countywide budget by cost category. So this this budget represents about 41% going towards salaries and benefits. The flip side of this chart is your countywide revenues. Obviously, local taxes at about $212 million is a significant portion of your revenue picture, as well as intergovernmental revenues. And I'll draw your attention again to the slice of the pie. That's the fund balance carryover of about $40 million for all funds. So that is currently being used in the proposed budget to give you a balanced budget for revenues and expenditures. This is our recommended funded position chart for fiscal year 17-18. Overall, there's a net decrease of 23 funded positions this year, primarily due to the closing of community clinics and the emergency children's shelter. There are a few additions in positions related to medical marijuana code enforcement and economic development efforts. And then as a reminder, we are also asking for consideration of the special districts proposed budget today. For 163 special districts and county service areas, we have a proposed budget of just over $35 million, which is down quite a bit from the current year, primarily due to capital projects changing in timing. we will again present a final budget to you in September with any technical adjustments related to your special districts. So again, moving forward towards the final budget in September, we will continue our phased approach to priority-based budgeting, including integrating into the county's new ERP system, developing performance measures to tie that performance to the cost of service, and refining our countywide goals and, again, tying them to the dollars that you spend for those services. In July, we'll be back with your board for a countywide budget update as well as a capital facilities workshop. And then in September, we'll return to you with your final budget adjustments, including a true-up of our carryover fund balance once the books close, and updated revenue projections, and a recommendation for how we might be able to address any remaining supplemental requests. So that concludes my presentation, just a high-level overview. We certainly have staff available for questions should you need more information.
All right, thank you very much. It looks like Supervisor Wygant is ready to go.
I have one question, actually, and I think I ask this every year, so just so you know. But I'm looking at, I'm not sure what slide it is. But at any rate, it's the road fund, and we have a final budget for this year of $77 million, it looks like, and it's proposed to be $58 million. So every year I ask about, we have this maintenance engineering methodology by which it reflects an optimum expenditure per year over the long run, so it'd actually be the cheapest for maintaining our roads for a long period of time. And so I'm just wondering what this number does to that model and what the current ranking of our road structure is. So maybe for Ken, but for anybody who wants to address that.
Good morning, Chair, board members. Ken Graham with Department of Public Works and Facilities. And so for the most part, the $77 million, most of that in the 58, most of that money, $50 million or so, has to associate with capital projects, not directly related to road maintenance. For that 15 or so that is road maintenance, we just conducted a study. It's draft, it's right out, it's just come out, about where we stand on our pavement quality index. The good news is your board, through some of the priorities you did last fiscal year, not the one we're currently in, but the previous one, we spent approximately $6 million in road maintenance in various projects last summer. That brought up our pavement quality index from a number that's about 50, which is bordering on not so good, up to 58, which brings us back up into the solid, fair range. We will, and we do have some supplemental requests for your board to consider as part of the final budget, where there are some plans in here about how we can either move that up, keep it stable, what it takes to do that. I anticipate through the final budget process that we'll have a little more detailed discussion. We'll even make sure we share the report with all of you board members so that you kind of understand where we're at, where we're going, and the ramifications of doing nothing or doing something, whatever that may be.
So you're going to meet with us all individually, is that the plan?
But prior to final budget,
Great.
Yes.
Super. Look forward to that. Thanks.
Dave, do you want to say anything about the capital projects workshop and how roads will be a part of that?
There we go. Dave DeFonte. We plan to come back July 24th to talk capital. The focus of that will be on county facilities, buildings, but a part of that discussion will also be key county roads as well. Obviously, with Sonoma-Geddon, there's some repairs that need to occur that have already been occurring, and then also some key economic development projects, namely Placer Parkway as well. So that will be part of the discussion too.
And don't forget Floodmageddon as well down here.
Floodmageddon,
Yeah.
also on our radar.
Yeah. Supervisor Wygant, your light's still on. Did you have more questions?
That's it.
Okay. Supervisor Holmes.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Bosch and the team for bringing this forward and working hard, particularly the youngsters in the back there that work on the budget as well. It's well done, and Ms. Sampson, you've done a tremendous job on your first. And I'm glad to see that we're going to do some extra funding for the libraries. So, thank you for that. I do see some red flags and flashing lights. I'm concerned about the in-home supportive services, maintenance of effort elimination. That's going to raise some costs for the county as we move forward. The annual required contribution for our pension obligations and our OPEB obligations, retired employee health benefits, it's going to be very increasing dramatically. And then I think we need to take a very hard look at our CAL FIRE contract with the increases on that. That's really not it's out of our hands, but we really need to take a hard look at the CAL FIRE contract in the next 2 or 3 years to see if we can afford that type of contract. Other than that, I'm going to support the request. I think it's been brought forward very succinctly, and appreciate the work again.
Supervisor Duran.
Yes, no, I want to piggyback on what Supervisor Holmes has just said about fire safety. As we all know, City of Roseville has issues, budgetary issues. The City of Lincoln has issues. We've now been hit with an increase on CAL FIRE, which all leads me to believe that the future is not going to be any more prettier, okay? Which also leads me to believe that we really do need to have a strategic plan moving forward to discuss how we are going to maintain service in a culture where costs are going up. Whether that means consolidation, whether that means different service models, whether that means we continue to build $4 million fire stations, or whether we find some other type of way to go about it. But we really do need to look down the road, not the next 5 years, but the next 10 to 15 years. Otherwise, we are going to continue to be hammered year after year with this same problem. And again, that is a priority. Public safety and fire safety are the core services that we provide here. So that's my comment on that. But I do think that if we don't lead it, we're going to be forced to do it at some point in time. And I sincerely think that we need to be at the forefront of this. We are the 800-pound gorilla in the room. So my second thing I would like to know is, I know that there are several safety-related developments in departments that need to be done, for example, with regards to the treasurer, tax collector, our assessor, and our auditor. How are those projects going to be selected, prioritized? Do you have a plan for that? Is that going to be part of your discussion in Tahoe?
That is something we've been talking about quite a bit. So again, the focus being primarily on those new buildings, but we definitely don't want to lose sight of required maintenance, the remodels or renovations, as you had mentioned, as well as capital planning in general. So all of those things are being discussed right now. All of those will be brought back to you in July. And we'll have a very nice synopsis of all of the projects currently being discussed, including all of the remodels and renovation projects, and offer some recommendations and discussion around which ones we may want to move forward with in the very near term.
Okay. All right. With that, I will also be supporting the recommendation.
Supervisor Euler.
What does CalPERS currently peg our total unfunded liabilities at, both pension and OPEB? Do we know?
In terms of our CalPERS retirement pension, we're approximately 2/3 funded, 1/3 unfunded.
Can we translate that to a dollar amount? Do we have a dollar amount associated with what we?
Yeah, Daniel Vick with the County Executive Office. Thank you, guys. I'm going off the top of my head here, but I think that the CalPERS liability is somewhere around $370 million right now.
Is that total combined between pension and OPEB, or is that?
That's just CalPERS.
That's just the pension side of it? Okay.
Correct. And then the
I'm sorry, that was how much?
I believe it's around $370 million. Okay. And the OPEB liability, I believe, falls somewhere in the $80 to $90 million range.
Okay.
But the good news there is that in terms of OPEB, we're approximately 80% funded, 20% unfunded,
Right.
which is extraordinary.
Right. CalPERS has essentially built in that any jurisdiction that might want to leave CalPERS and no longer be an enrolled agency has to pay 100% of the unfunded liability. So is that just that pension side, or is that the pension plus the OPEB side?
They're focused on the pension side, but there's actually an even bigger hurdle to overcome. It's not just the outstanding unfunded amount, but you also
Total
have
actuarial obligation of all existing enrolled employees.
I think correct, and I think when we looked at that before, it would be about $1 billion for us to get out of CalPERS.
Right.
So a huge hurdle.
They would make us pay 100% of the total actuarial obligation that they calculate as of the day of departure, assuming that we would not be making any more payments to them, but we would simply be just done, is what they're...
Correct. Plus, yes, the amount that would be necessary based on their actuarial assumptions that would grow over time sufficient to cover all of that liability.
Right.
Could I answer?
Yeah.
So does that mean that they would then fund those retirements?
Yes, but we would have to come up with a substitute pension program.
Got it. Yeah.
So it's cost prohibitive. At least I was just at a conference a week or so ago, and that very topic came up, and a bunch of us managers looked around and said, how in the world could we potentially come up with an alternative, and they've just made it darn near impossible.
Well, and this is a conversation that goes back now a number of years in regard to our legislative platform, and that is that it would require legislation that would force CalPERS to essentially accept that jurisdictions are going to continue to make payments on their existing employees. It would be as if we just decided we were never going to hire a new employee, and that all future employees were in some other system, and they would simply have to accept that we're not going to enroll new employees into CalPERS. All existing employees would continue with their agreement, and that eventually over time that obligation would just be paid down to zero, with all new employees being in some other formula, and all it takes is state legislation in order to require them to allow jurisdictions to do that without coming up with this $1 billion check up front in order to come out of it. And so is there conversation amongst executives at the city and county level to continue to push that point? Because unless we do it, nobody's going to do it. The state sure as hell isn't going to do it themselves.
I see Joel smiling because he's our legislative liaison. He probably has keener insight. I would say it is an ongoing topic of discussion at virtually every CSAC, League of California Cities, meeting of executive level staff. The impediment, of course, is the legislature.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, not to sound like I'm taking a dig, but I think to say all it takes is a legislative action is, I think...
If the cities and counties of this state, special districts of this state, were unified in our voice, then I would hope that perhaps there might be 21 senators and 41 members of our legislature that might be willing to listen.
Oh, that's a wonderful aspiration.
And I can certainly broach this topic with CSAC to a larger point than what is just currently in our platform. But yes, the idea is to, instead of funding the $1 billion total liability, fund the $370 over time and get out and go to a 401k or whatever other style of pension plan the board so chooses to implement. But our average state advocates are aware of this issue. It is a common conversation topic at many of these state conferences. And it is being looked at, especially as these pension liabilities continue to grow and CalPERS continues to look at lowering the discount rate even further.
Thank you.
Okay, looks like no other comments from the board, so that leaves it to me. I did have, I'm just going to sort of go through, not necessarily slide by slide, but there were a couple of slides I just wanted to touch on. Just in terms of, I think it was slide 4, budget development, the economy, and balancing continued improvement with fiscal sustainability. We had a presentation this morning at Medlar's from the city of Auburn where they talked about the fact that they're really seeing sales tax revenue start to decline. They're seeing property tax start to flatten. And I think it's very important, Roseville having the same issues, City of Oakland having the same issues. I think it's important to recognize that our country goes through periodic economic downturns, roughly every 4 to 7 years. We are beyond due for that next economic downturn, although some of us may feel like we never really saw the full upturn. But I think this board needs to be very mindful, and I want to thank staff for being mindful about this, that, even in property tax revenue, which we see, we're going to see positive on that next year, 3 to 4%. That's down, I believe, from last year, which was somewhere between 6 and 7%. So we are starting to see a tightening of revenue sources, and I think it's really critically important that we continue to recognize that this is going to be a challenge moving into the future. And that's true really across all revenues. I think particularly at the federal level, and some of those contributions that we've seen in the past, we may be seeing that change. And so we should be very mindful about how we move forward with that. Moving to slide number, I think it was 5. I'm not positive. This is a recent accomplishment and ongoing efforts. Glad to see that we're working on some of this stuff around fiscal stability and development issues. I am a little bit concerned regarding housing and homelessness, that we don't have specific dollars allocated within our budget to planning for the housing piece. I know that we intend to revisit this with the final budget, and I just want to make sure that everyone is very clear that this is very much on my radar. And I believe it's on the radar of the rest of the board as well. I think we've all taken some pretty significant positions in the last year that where we've said, look, why aren't we talking more about housing and what we can do to bring more achievable housing across all spectrums of the housing realm in Placer County, both for sale and for rent. The focus on priority-based budgeting, I'm just really delighted that we're moving forward on this. I'm also really delighted that we have that performance evaluation as part of that as well. And one of the things that I have had many conversations with David about relating to this is looking at all our contracts, both long-term and short-term, to make sure that we're getting performance-based productivity out of our contracts, to make sure that our taxpayers are getting the value for their money out of all those contracts. And I think we've taken some really great actions in conversations with some of our contractors around that, and I think we're going to have better outcomes if we continue moving forward with that performance-based contracting model as well, to say, okay, we're giving you money. What is our community getting in return for those dollars? We've not had a lot of those conversations over the years with many of our contractors, but I think it's just absolutely in sync with what we're trying to do within our own departments. Again, I know this is coming back, our conversation about capital facilities and what we're going to do around that, and it's already been brought up. But again, want to make sure that as part of that capital facilities conversation, we don't let the Tahoe Sheriff Substation and Court entirely fall off the radar. It's something I bring up every year, and sometimes I feel like I'm just shouting into the void, but I'm going to keep shouting into the void until I get something back on this. Related, not directly, but related to that, of course, is a revisit around roads, bridges, infrastructure with the Snowmageddon and the Floodmageddon impacts that we had this year. I was actually surprised to hear Ken say that our road condition has improved. I'm not sure if that took into consideration what happened this winter. He's shaking his head no. So yes, that did not take into consideration what happened this winter. So I would guess if we redid that analysis today, we would probably not be at a 58. Though that was great to hear. Let's see. Probably just a couple more things. One of the things that I did want to just point out generally, I know it was touched on, but our current interim budget that we're looking at today, our proposed budget, is about 2.5% lower than last year's budget. That will probably become fairly flat to last year's budget once we calculate in all the things that are going to happen over the summer and then adopt the budget in September. But I think it's important for people, again, to recognize that while there is a perception of these growing revenue increases, there are matching and in some cases exceeding, like fire contract, increases in costs. And so we're still seeing a flat budget, but higher costs and more obligations, and therefore things are getting squeezed. And people don't like to see things get squeezed. None of us do as well, but it just really bears repeating. And I think those were my real comments around the budget. I, too, am very pleased with the work that all of you have done and everybody else in our departments who have worked on this, and whether it's the actual number crunching or the policies that help us implement this. So I will be supporting this today. Supervisor Euler.
Yeah, a couple quick questions. What is currently, I know Janine's not here. Andy, I don't know if this is something that you might know off the top of your head. What is our county's current borrowing rate if we were to just go out and borrow money based on our general fund? Any idea?
Andy Sess, County Auditor Controller. I would say that number is probably around 3 to 4%.
Okay. And this year, and this is not a question for you, but this year, David, our total PERS contribution, well, PERS, our OPEB, total that we're paying out for both OPEB and our retirement is approximately?
I'd have to look that up. OPEB, let me turn on my microphone. There it goes.
I was looking at
OPEB is about $54 million this year. Or excuse me, our CalPERS is about $54 million. Our OPEB contribution is?
I think for the operating funds, it would be $54 million. Countywide, I believe our contribution to CalPERS is at $61 million in the total budget.
Okay.
And then I think for OPEB, it's around, I'm thinking off the top of my head, we have it budgeted at $15 million for an annual contribution.
Okay, that's 15 singular?
15 million for OPEB.
Okay, for OPEB.
Right.
And then add the PERS burden, and your combined total is?
75 million.
That's about 75 million for both combined.
All right, well, maybe this is a conversation that we want to enlist Janine in, because call me crazy, I just did a 30-year amortization on $1 billion at 3.5%. It comes out to $54 million a year. So if we wrote the check today for $1 billion to get out of PERS and we amortize it over 30 years, we're paying $54 million static, no increase in that, and all new hires, and that covers all PERS obligations were done, and all new hires go into a different system.
Maybe through the Treasury, maybe.
And I don't know if this changes the number.
3.5% at $1 billion, 3.5% over $30 million, $54 million a year. We actually save, based on what we're projecting our PERS obligation to go to in just 4 or 5 years, we actually save a substantial amount of money.
And then we can build our Tahoe Sheriff substation.
Then we can do all kinds of things. But, I mean, a structured 30-year amortization of that $1 billion at 3.5%, we're out.
Yeah. And just one correction on the net pension liability, it's $430 million. Our OPEB is 80.
Okay. But I heard $1 billion price tag to get out of PERS and be done and wash our hands of it. That's the number I heard. And,
Yep,
and
that's
so
what they tell us.
maybe this is a conversation we might want to engage our treasurer tax collector in, because if we rather than seeing what we're looking at here, with our annual contributions growing within 6-7 years up to over $100,000 a year. We're locked in at $54 million a year static. We're done with that obligation, and any new hires go under a different system, and we freed ourselves of that monster.
And may I suggest, because I already have in the past, that we also consider, if we're going to be talking about borrowing for some of these capital facilities, so that instead of trying to scrape all our dollars together over the years.
It looks like we might be able to cash flow some other things if we're no longer looking at those obligations climbing like that.
It's true. Anyone else on the board have any comments before I open it up to the public? David, your light is still on, but I'm assuming that's just because it's still on. All right, any member of the public like to come forward and comment on this item? Ask questions, comment, opine, whatever you would like to do. Please come forward, identify yourself. Thank you.
Sure, good morning. Honorable Supervisors, my name is Michelle Vass, and I'm the president of the Rockland Friends of the Library, and I'm here today to speak on behalf of the budget recommendations that are before you today. As you know, our library system has taken a beating in recent years with reduced hours in staffing and closing of some branches in an effort to do their part during the recession when funds were scarce. And we believe it's time now to restore our libraries to their previous service levels and rebuild our collections to provide robust services for our communities now and in the future. And the proposal put forward by Library Services Director Mary George addresses the library's most pressing funding issues and sets a firm foundation to build upon in subsequent years. I would like to thank Supervisors Montgomery, Holmes, Wygant, and Mueller for meeting with members of our local friends groups over the last few months. I know each of you understands how important the libraries are in every community that they serve. Speaking on behalf of Rockland, our library service area includes Sierra College, William Jessup University, Whitney and Rockland High, numerous other schools, along with charter and homeschool students. Adding Monday hours back to our library would help the students of our nationally recognized educational institutions continue to grow and excel in their studies. Our library also hosts numerous adults seeking literacy services and English language learners. Our library, book club, and children's programming is also quite popular. Just yesterday, our Rockland Police Department partnered with us and hosted a story time at their station with approximately 60 children in attendance because they believe, as the Friends do, that there should be free and safe educational opportunities on Mondays for the children in our community. The purpose of the Rockland Friends of the Library is to advocate, fundraise, and promote library services in our community. We have neither the education or expertise that trained librarians and staff bring to their jobs every day. We cannot understate the value that these professionals bring to our libraries and would be wrong to infer that volunteers could ever be able to supplant this staff. In closing, we brought you a gift to thank you for your support, some nifty little book socks, and we'd like you to wear them and stand with Placer County Friends groups in support of our libraries today and in the future. Thank you for your support.
Thank you very much. You wouldn't mind just giving those to our secretary? Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to comment, question, collaborate, berate us? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment on this item, and I'm going to bring this back to the board. This is an action item. We're being asked to take a series of actions here. Jerry, how would you like us to take these?
The first two, at least, individually.
Okay, so the first two individually, that is item 5A, 1 and 2. So let's start with 5A1. Pleasure of the board.
I move adoption of fiscal year 2017-18 proposed budget for Placer County.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. Next, 5A2.
Move adoption of fiscal year 2017-18 proposed budgets for lighting districts, county service area zones, and sewer maintenance districts governed by your board.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Jerry, is the implication then that we can take 3, 4, and 5 all at once? All right, what's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval of items 3, 4, and 5 designated on page 21 of staff report.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Excellent. Another successful day at the Domes. Thank you all very, very much for your work on this. Incredibly helpful to us. I'm sure we will have follow-up questions and conversations between now and September, but again, my thanks to all of you, sincerely. Having completed all business, we stand adjourned.